sent it back to the meeting. Well, my watch says 9:30, so we're going to get going very good. You ready? And so this is our regular transit board meeting for July the 24th. And if you join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and Rick, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our meetings are conducted by outlined in our agenda. There's a copy of the agenda in the back of the room. Follow along with that, and during the course of this meeting, we will have an opportunity at each agenda item for public comments. You'll have 3 minutes to state your comments. And if somebody has made a statement that you agree with, rather than repeating their statement, just support their statement by saying that you agree with them. So pretty much for management of our time, we get through this, we try to get through this by or before noon. We do not have any guests here that I don't believe that are joining us today, special guests. And so the next item on our agenda is the approval of the July 24th agenda items. Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve the agenda as presented.
There is a motion to approve the July 24th agenda. And
I'll second it.
There's a second from Mr. Sundberg. And any further discussion on that item? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. The July 24th agenda item is approved as presented. Next item is the approval of the minutes for the May 22nd regular business meeting. Entertain a motion for that.
I'll move to approve the minutes of May 22nd regular business meeting.
And I'm looking for a second.
I second it.
And we have a second. So any further discussion on those meeting, the agenda, excuse me, the minutes to the June 8th? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Next item is the approval of this summary of the minutes for the July 13th special meeting and workshop. And entertain a motion for that also.
I think you skipped June 8th.
Yeah, you do.
Let's
We do the 8th and the 13th, how's that?
Yeah, let's just consolidate those things. June 8th and June 13th minutes. Take a motion on that.
So moved.
I second it.
And we have a motion and a second for approving this summary minutes of June 8th, July 13th special meeting workshop. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries.
I'd just say that the minutes are very complete,
Yeah.
and the summary at each meeting is very helpful.
And, you know, just a comment, just stepping out of the sequence here. You know, I'm just wondering if we want to consider a consent
I was
agenda
gonna say,
on a lot of these items.
Typically, at the county level, we do
future.
these all as a consent item.
If we can take like the master vouchers, the minutes, and all of these administrative type things, put them in a consent agenda, then we handle it with one motion.
And if there's anything anybody has any question on, they move it to the regular agenda.
Okay. And so now let's go through, and we have the approval of the June 20 and July 20 master voucher lists. We'll consolidate those two at the same time.
I'll move approval of those two master voucher lists since I've looked them over.
And I'll second, I'll move as well.
So we have a motion and a second to approve the June and the July master voucher list. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Those are approved. Next item is for public input. We are going to have public comments. Please restrict your comments to 3 minutes, as I said earlier. And if an item is an agenda item, save your comments for that agenda item. We'll give you a chance to speak to that. You may speak to other items within the transit district's jurisdiction. Are there any public comments in that? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, Charlene Hubbard,
Yes.
and I was able to attend a couple months ago, and I asked the question of the board if you would review the credentials and qualifications of the people currently performing positions of IT, and especially if you could call upon your expert that you had at that meeting, which was the 911 guy, who had stated that he'd worked with these people for 3 years, to evaluate whether they were appropriate in providing value for the taxpayers of Island County with their abilities. And I'm wondering if that had been done.
Okay, thank you. Now, in these public comments period, the board may or may not respond to those comments at the time, but I am going to take that one because I think Mr. Shaughnessy did address that in terms of our relationship with ICOM and our transit system in general, mostly in communication. That's what it was really about. And he did a pretty detailed presentation on that, and I'm not going to go through, and I can't go through all of the processes, but they were talking about our communication centers, the different types of communication systems, and how ICOM wants to improve it so that we are interconnected with the transit and ICOM. So I can tell you that there is action moving forward on that, specifically to answer your question about the qualifications of the people, the department heads or people who are in IT. That was not addressed in that, but I did not hear any objections to it.
Not only that, they explained that the IT people here were not at fault in the failure, the 2011 failure of upgrade. It was the external consultants who recommended something that didn't work. And I think the IT people here may have even told them that it wouldn't work, but they went ahead.
And thanks for bringing that, because that is what, in fact, Mr. Shaughnessy and the people who are here presenting this made a pretty clear statement about that. And my recollection is from that meeting is that the previous administration went forward and instituted that communication system against the advice of ICOM and the people presenting who manage that system. That is a fragmented explanation of what happened at that meeting, but I think that represents pretty closely what happened and where we're going with this. And I see a gentleman nodding his head yes back there, so if anybody else knows more about that than I do, I would entertain that as a public comment too to help you understand what is happening, Charlotte.
Respectfully, you didn't answer my question. You had told me about a meeting, you told me about a general inquiry, but you did not address my question, which is whether the specific individuals employed in this capacity actually have the background and the expertise to provide value to the taxpayers.
Okay.
The management decisions that have made, whether good or bad, they're in the past. A lot of money was wasted, and again, whether they have been examined by anyone as to whether they were correct. Actually, we're doing value from them.
Okay. I'm going to respond to that this way. I have not looked at any resumes, and I don't know that any of the other board members have looked at any resumes. But May, if we could put this in the minutes so that we can talk with Ken about this when he gets back, we will address that specifically. And you deserve an answer.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other public comments? Yes, Gail.
To cover on with the, for the qualifications for the infotech individuals, I do have a request in with Robin, and we need to go over some of the public records requests. One of them, which I believe should be the simplest, is to come up with the job descriptions. I asked for the job descriptions of those two individuals. And when job descriptions are a requirement for federal grants, that you have to submit job descriptions on an annual basis on certain things. And so these job descriptions should be right there. Bam, pull it up. It's done. I have come up with some of my own, by going to the Washington State Department of Transportation and the DOT. I've been researching the different info technology and the levels of them. And we'll just have to see when we see what their job descriptions come up as, because it's there's going to be a lot of questions there. There still are.
Specifically, job descriptions for each
For each
IT or all
for each IT, because they each hold different titles, and they get moved from department to department, and so they hold different titles. But even at a lowest level, at an info technology support, those two back there don't qualify at all. I'll give you that much. So this is a big issue.
Can I just offer this, that I would think, and Lance, you're here, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would think that job descriptions and qualifications, et cetera, are going to be part of our negotiations as we go through, and with employee qualifications and whatnot, correct?
Yeah, sure, I would imagine. Job description.
And then the only other part of that of a comment that I wanted to make was, I'm not sure if you are aware of this or not, board, but I like to hope that our manager, Nick Pinch, is doing okay after his car accident in a state-owned Prius, and there was not a drug or alcohol test done after it. And when I hope he's doing okay, because he had recent surgery. So I'm not sure how management staff can make the decision to not have him go to medical facility, or to do a required mandatory post-accident drug and alcohol test for fit for duty. Especially when you just get done having surgery and you're back at work, and you could still be under the influence of narcotics, so you just might not be right physically. Who knows? But a state-owned Prius was totaled. It's no longer going to be around, so you'll be hearing about that surplus for whatever reason comes up. But you have an employee that was not drug tested after a pretty bad post-accident. So I will leave that to you to take care of, because I'm going on my own route with it.
Well, my only comment is, I believe that's a state control jurisdiction type of issue. And I think I'm in safe territory by saying, when there is a road situation, the administration is involved in it. When it's a legal situation for drug and alcohol testing during an accident, that's under the jurisdiction of the Sheriff's Department or the Washington State Patrol. That is their area of expertise, and I think this is probably the council's comment on this. That's where we want to go. I don't know.
I don't know any of the facts, so
I don't either. I totally blank on that, but I think it's pretty safe to say the state patrol or the sheriff get involved in that for special testing. That's it. I'm going to move along. Thank you very much. Any other comments? Yes, sir.
Hi, Dan Brown. I think you need to be corrected on that accident deal. When a person gets in an accident in a company vehicle, they call their supervisor. The supervisor goes out, takes them out to a P-test, and that's the way it operates. And this wasn't done, or somebody told them that they don't have to do it. Do you have any?
Okay, I'm going to stand corrected on that, and I'll turn to Sean to answer that question. He's closer to it than I am.
Yeah, so I've dealt with accidents and drug testing for a long time. I went out to the scene that day This happened down by Admiral's Drive. Someone pulled in front of Nick on the highway. Nick had the right of way. The State Patrol ticketed the other driver that pulled out in front of him, so it was clearly not that employee was not at fault. And so therefore we talked about this, then there was no reason for that employee to have to go in to be tested. This employee was in a non-revenue situation as well. So he was on his way home.
Okay, thank you. I stand corrected. This is the first I've heard about it.
I figured as much.
Say that the venue of the sheriff's.
The sheriff and the state.
And there was someone there
Yeah.
issuing a ticket.
And you're notified that a decision is made for that. Does that clear this up for each of you?
That information was passed on to Mr. Graska as well.
Okay, all right.
Full detail, full report.
We'll move along. Any other public comments? Okay.
Real brief and not to change the subject too much from the accident, but this is real brief, but I want everyone to be aware that Skagit Transit at skagit-transit.org has their 6-year transit development plan, and since it omits any reference to connecting with Island Transit, figured you might want to put a comment in skagit-transit.org.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any others before we move along with our agenda item? Hearing that we are moving along, the public comment period is hereby closed. We'll go with the manager's report. Anybody doing the manager's report in his absence?
I think we're probably just going to follow the agenda with the financial report and operations. But I think I can start.
Okay, and just move down to the financial reports. Okay, that's it. We'll go through that. And then we'll go to operations, and then if there's any other items. Yep.
So I put together this PowerPoint presentation just to summarize the information that was sent out to the commissioners about just various financial points that I wanted to bring up. Whoops. Okay. So the first item is just June cash. It's at 1.38 million, and you can see that this is a month-by-month portrayal of cash balances. You can see that we still have a growing balance, and that's with the caveat that we are still putting aside money to make a large insurance payment in October and again in January. So it's not that we're running at an incredible profit margin and storing taxpayer money, but rather the timing of our payments doesn't exactly match the timing of our revenues. But we are still in a good cash position, and that's a positive. This shows it in a yearly way, an annual display of liquidity or cash. You can see in 2013 we had a real shortage, but we are recovering again. And you can see each bar is a year's example, but the last one is just a 6-month portrayal.
The last one is a half year.
It's a half year, that's right. Just gives you an idea of where we're moving. Monthly profitability, so about $94,000 a month in the first 6 months, and again, timing of the payments is an issue that doesn't really show up on this chart, where we'll be making some greater outlays later this year. But so far, that's why our cash balance is rising. It's because we're receiving the revenue. We planned it this way, we're receiving the revenue early in the year, and then a lot of those payments are going to go out late in the year. Possibly capital items that we have on schedule to be purchased, and also the large WISTIP payment that was delayed in October. Annual profitability. So this is since 2011, And you can see, we saw this 2 months ago as well. The auditors identified in their report that in 11, 12, and 13, we weren't even maintaining a profit. But in 14 and 15, you can see that we are. So in a sense, we're financially sustainable.
Well, I know that's the correct term for accounting, but we are a not-for-profit agency, and so that is probably better called an operating surplus
Okay.
or revenue surplus,
Okay.
because the revenue surplus is something that we, as responsible managers, are obliged to maintain. And
Okay. I'll change that.
sure.
For the next time. But we can see the surplus here in the last 2 years. We're watching it closely to make sure that we if the police take in as much as we spend.
Yeah, and it shows the recovery that has taken place in the last 6 months. The last bars are not even 6 months, right?
Oh, I'm sorry, it is 6 months. The April is incorrect. That should be June.
That should be June.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's June.
That also, it also shows that our expenses are running below budget, but maybe you'll get to that. The red bar is below what was budgeted for the first 6 months.
Well, this is actual data.
Yeah, and the actual expenditures are below budget.
Now, can you go back to that for just 1 second, Paul?
Okay.
If you look at the the surplus or the deficit, are those graphs accurate or reasonably accurate to scale with dollars?
They are.
Because if you look at each of the green, they are the same length as the margins at the top between the blue and the
That's right.
red.
Yeah, that's right.
And,
That's what, that's
yeah,
there.
it just shows that offset right there. And down below, as you get into the positive, you can see that we are building gradually a sustainability fund or an emergency fund. So we're moving in the right direction, slowly.
Another element that kind of comes into play and affects our decisions is fuel prices. And as you can see, here are the month-by-month fuel expenditures that we've incurred. And we hit a really nice spell there in January and February. And it rose a little bit for the next 3 months, and it's rising again slightly. So just gives you an idea. We still have savings. We like to budget what we think we might incur, right around that $3.50 per gallon to $4.50, depending on where we purchase it. Camino fuel is a little more expensive than my Whitby. But the actuals and the actual costs that we're incurring have been lower than budget, and that's been one of the sources of our extra surplus that we're seeing right now. So that's a really positive thing for this organization. And like I said before, this is an update to our ridership statistics. We reduced some service last year, and it's impacting our ridership. You can see the last 6 bars are last year's figures, and the first 6 bars are this year's. I just left those last years in there just for comparison. And you can see we're running at a little lower, well, significantly lower ridership. But that's what happens when you reduce your costs. It reduces the runs, and the ridership will fall naturally. Our efficiency is pretty consistent, though. That's we can see again we've added 2 more months to our statistics, and we can see where our pair is the most expensive program per ride, and then we have our fixed, which is really fixed Whidbey and Camino, and then of course Vanpool is the least expensive program we're running per ride. but it's remains pretty constant. There is always variation as to the cost for each program month by month, but on average, it's pretty consistent as to what it costs per ride in each of those programs. And these next slides are really 411 considerations that I could talk about now or we could talk about later. I know that that's also on the agenda, but we can talk about it and
Maybe, I don't know, come back to it.
Or
Come
we
back
can come back
to it
if
if
you'd
you
like to. Okay.
more relevant to our conversation.
Is that it?
So that's all. Yeah, that's all I have really to say. Does anyone have any questions or further questions?
Now, on that financial report, Jim, do you have any comments?
Well,
Report?
I would add that I think Paul is, I've met with him a couple times, and Jill and I are the subcommittee for the board, and today Rick Hannell filled in for Jill. Of course, one of the interesting things is Paul is head of the game on putting together both the 6-year plan for that we will be considering in August, similar, I guess, to what Skagit has done. I mean, all of us are required to put together 6-year plans for our agency for operating and capital expenses. And the other thing that the Finance Committee is aware of is that Paul has begun making a very useful template for budgeting purposes, for budgeting for 2016. And as soon as he gets first pass of what managers think is required to maintain our level of service, it will be seen. Yeah.
Next item then, operations. Sean?
So I'll defer until we get to the 411 discussion.
Any other items of the board? Lance, do you have any comments or discuss at this time?
I don't.
Rick? Okay, so we're going to move on to the chair's report. A couple of things I would like to bring you up to date on is, let me outline a little bit of where my focus is as the chair on this board. Each one of the board members has been delegated responsibilities with respect to the transit system here. Obviously, we've heard that Jim, he's involved in the finance side of it, and each of us come from different backgrounds, and one of the focuses that I have is not to micromanage the operation, but rely on the department heads to manage this operation and through their executive director. And my focus is to pay close attention to what the executive director's styles and decisions are as he works between the board and the staff. The executive director works at the pleasure of the board and not the other way around. The other area that, two other areas that I am personally focused on are related to the big picture. Number one is this building has not been closed out. And we've been occupying this building for 2 years without closing out the construction process with FTA. And we are getting very, very close to coming to a conclusion with the contractor and the architect. The architect was actually back in the conversation, which he should have been in my opinion, 2 years ago. And there is about $500,000 of subcontractor retention being held in escrow that is of no fault of most of these subcontractors. And to me, that's unconscionable that people's money is tied up for long periods of time. But there is a process that you have to go through to release that money, and part of that process is getting audit approval from the different agencies like the State Department of Revenue, L&I, et cetera, to make sure that taxes are paid by each of these people. And the state will not do the audit on the individual contractors until they package them all together, and that doesn't happen until we have a sign-off with the architect. The outstanding issues that are hanging in there is this issue about the color of the slab, the varying colors of the slab with the hardener. It's called a dry shake hardener that was put on the slab, and it's for reflecting light and also providing a hard surface on the concrete. There's a variety of reasons why that system was not completely successful, and I'm not going to go into all the details on that. But the consequence also of the way the slab was poured and designed, it has created not just checking but cracking in the slab. It's not structural, it's visual, and that was a hang-up for the previous executive director, not really understanding, in my opinion, what the relationship is to the structural design of the slab and the results where we're getting cracking in that slab. The architect is involved in it. We are coming to a conclusion with the contractor. In my opinion, the contractor has been very cooperative and straightforward to working toward a solution on this. And one of our goals is not to become involved in a legal confrontation with any of the parties. I think this thing will be solved in a reasonable period of time. We have targeted 90 days from the date that we started these conversations with the contractor, the architect, which was June 18th. We're looking at September 18th, September 20th in that area to have a solution, and the correction should be made shortly thereafter. And so I don't have a definite resolution, who's paying for what, how it's going to be resolved, but we are getting close to getting this building closed out. And the other part that I'm personally really involved in, close with the staff, is to improve the efficiencies and the connectivity, the seamless connectivity with the other transit districts. I have been, and I have a number of emails here with Barb Bailey and Dave Hayes, Representative Hayes, and we are working toward a solution, whatever that solution may be, to reduce the overlap of these different agencies, to still allow seamless connectivity between each transit district, because our job is to provide seamless, reliable transportation from community to community, district to district, and get people from here to Seattle, Everett, wherever, in the most efficient, cost-effective way. And we are working towards doing that, and I think that's, I can't speak for the board, but I believe that the board is probably on board with that kind of approach. So we will talk about the 411 and that stuff as we get into those part of the agenda. So rather than micromanaging, I'm looking more at, my focus is more on the big picture of how we can improve this operation. That's all I have to say. Any further comments? Do you have anything? And we're going to move on to our business items. So business item number 1 is discussion of possible action regarding the 411W and 411C. And I'm not sure, I guess, Robin, you're going to present on this. We have asked for, and Matt, we've asked for a summary of what do those bills really mean to us in terms of, there's 2 of them. One for $1 million that has strings attached requiring island transit charge fares, The 2.3 verbally says no strings attached, but they're both for the tri-county connector. And, well, I'm just
$1
going.
million is for the 412.
For the 412.
$1 million is not an issue, that's for the 412 route. The 411 is what we're discussing.
Well, I'm giving a brief on what the two funding things are.
Well, they're not for the same thing.
Well,
They're both connectors, Everett connector and Tri-County connector.
Right, but one's
They're-
412.
412,
411.
411.
The two funding sources are for different routes.
Yep.
that's interesting. So I'm gonna let Matt, he got the information, and Robin, if you wanna start this out. Robin.
Yeah, Rob, we've been working in concert.
Okay.
We had our last update with DOT yesterday afternoon, and we're pretty much where we were last time we met.
This is regarding the
The
fares.
411, the Tri-County Connector, the 411 service.
For fares or?
Funding.
For funding?
Not fares. Although everything was signed by the governor, he has now gone back and reassessing, so those funds are not fully approved, they're not available to us, and we really have no further details. DOT is waiting until the governor goes back and makes a decision. We don't know if those funds are part of the holdup and will be included in that big transportation package. So there's not a lot we have to go on right now. I don't know, Matt, if you have anything.
Look, it appears as if once they're funded, it would be from the effective date of the bill, which would be July 16th, I think was the date the governor signed it.
That would be the earliest, DOT said. If approved, July 16th would be the earliest we could reimburse from. If that's not, a given, but they said that's what it looks like because that's when it was signed. So at least if the funding does come through, we could reimburse back to that date, which would be great. But we just don't know if it's going to go ahead and we'll have it or not. So.
Well, I don't understand the confusion on this, because I had a lengthy conversation with Barbara Beatty yesterday, and it's her understanding that this was a done deal.
And that's not, what DOT said to us yesterday was, it is not approved, they have nothing, because they will issue a contract
Right.
to us to do that, and they don't have approval on their end to do that, so they said nothing is firm, and it's all in this poison pill, with the carbon tax. It's still up in the air.
Well, Nick Cadillac and I met with Paul on the financial end of this, and concluded that the policy trade-off for the board is a question of where we want to wind up at the end of 2015 and at the end of 2016. And Paul has put together a comparison of different levels of continuation of the 411 W and the 411C, which is the connectivity to Marsh's Point and the connectivity, I guess, to Camino Island. The C is for
In Mount Vernon, right?
Mount Vernon, yeah. And I don't know, I guess what I have is the summary, but I don't have the actual figures of the cost of continuing right here. I think that was passed out earlier.
Well, when I spoke with Paul earlier, it's approximately $43,000 a month to run this service.
Direct costs.
Direct costs. We are currently we are $100,000 ahead of our budgeted expenditures for the year. or yeah, so we've got a $100,000 cushion, which would fund 2.5 months of the 411. But even with the way we're revenues and expenditures fall out, even if we were to continue the service as it is, no interruption or anything like that, we would still continue to move forward. We would continue to build a surplus, even without the funding from the state for the 411.
For how long?
Through to 2016 is what we projected. It's just a slower growth.
If we were, I'll give you a copy of what I handed to the others.
These numbers that Paul's handing out also are showing we're meeting a match for the replacement of 9 buses. But currently, so far, what these numbers aren't showing you is that we've received $20,000 from the sale of surplus buses. We've received a check for that. Plus, we're anticipating another $60,000 in the sale of the rest of them, which is going to give us $80,000 that would be used towards the match.
Can you hold that thought for just 1 second, where this is going to come in to pay it back on our grant, 106,
109,000.
Is that, you know?
I should say that there are a lot of moving items always
Right.
in this conversation, so I should always put a lot of this, what we say in parentheses, because the items will jump in and jump out over time. Like SGR wasn't originally budgeted, it's something that we're going to be paying back this month. There are also probably going to be some capital items that would go into the 2016 budget that aren't on the schedule. We talked about that vans, which I'd like to see purchased on a regular schedule over the next 10 years. So, but what we discussed and what Mr. Hamill was talking about was fuel savings, less the SGR payback. There's about 100,000 extra that we have in our pockets right now, which could cover 2.5 months of direct costs. Something that's not on the schedule is the idea that I mentioned in our meeting also, the purchase of vans, which could be the $150,000 to $200,000 range, which would lower the total balance that we would end up, no matter what choice we made at the end of 2016. So, and then the other thing I should probably state, if we just look at any of these bars, and you can see, for example, well, let's say the blue bar, the dark blue bar, which is saying that we continue our 411 service 100% where we are right now. If you compare the Decembers, you're going from like 1.2 million down to like just under $1 million cash balance. We would see a negative budget in 2016. So, you know, we would be spending more than we'd be taking in over that time frame. So there is a certain element to that as well. But where we would land depends on what type of service we would choose over that time frame. And this chart here just shows some various options that we've already discussed, including 2 others that we didn't discuss last time. And the light blue bar is our 15-16 budget. This is what I've been this was a starting point for me, which is 40% service ending in December of 2015. That was the starting point when I originally did a 2-year projection. And you can see where we land there, about 1.1 million at the end of 2016. And the second dark blue bar is 100% service all the way through 2016. So instead of ending at 15, you're now ending at 16 in this example. And you would end up with just over 0.9 million. The green bar was one of the options we had discussed before, 41% service, which is 5 runs on Whidbey, 4 on Camino. And you can see at the end of that, it would be like you'd end with about 1.35 million. The yellow one is three runs on Whidbey, 3 on Camino, ending at about 1.45 million. The light orange would be 17% service, 6 Whidbey runs only, no Camino runs, ending at about 1.55 million. And then the dark orange, which would be not continuing service after August, ending up with about 1.6 million or 2 months of operating expenses. So in the first scenario, or the second scenario, the dark blue, you'd end up probably around that 1 month of reserves. In the last scenario, about 2 months of reserves. So where we land depends on the choices that we make.
One of the interesting things is the upward trend in the second half of 2016, sort of level the first 6 months,